Hey guys, Tarke here, and I am going to attempt to defend Bestiary League while at the same time acknowledging the many flaws with Bestiary League. And before I break into that, I just want to quickly say we'll be having a Bay class this Saturday coming. For anyone new to the channel, that is a PvE podcast. We'll be going into this in even more depth. So if you want other people's opinions, definitely look forward to that. So the reason why I'm making this video is a lot of people are quite rightly shitting on Bestiary League. While this is actually one of my favourite leagues in a really long time. Saying that, this league is screwed on so many levels, but at the same time, this is one of my favourite leagues in a really long time, and I'm very happy that GGG is trying new things. Very much so. And I don't want GGG to be put off by all the stuff they've gotten wrong. So let's kind of go through the I love this league, but. So, there have been major execution stumbles basically at every step, both before and post-league launch. So when the league was first announced, the streamer reaction was pretty mixed. A few people kind of like, seems kind of cool, seems kind of weird, but a lot of kind of like, Monka-esque. Monka-else was kind of like the default reaction that most people had, both from a streamer and from a just general loud people talking about it on Reddit and in Twitch chat and stuff. There seemed to be a lot of skepticism going into the league. Now, personally, we had an entire Bay class about it. I gave a few videos on it. I sent a lot of emails to Bex kind of saying, these are kind of my concerns, and concerns were very much raised before the league went live. We had one Q&A, and thank you very much for that Q&A, GGG, which helped put a lot of people's initial worries to rest. It was kind of like, okay, a lot of our main issues with tracking mobs and netting and stuff, it doesn't seem that bad. Everyone who before was kind of like... So before we get into it, there is one thing you also need to acknowledge. With any company, especially with GGG, because GGG are such a cool company, you have the people who will white knight regardless of quality. So again, this is one of my favourite leagues in a fucking long time. I really love this league. But there's a few major missteps here. You're allowed to criticize something that you like. It's good to criticize something you like. So when the initial early reactions of Bestiary League were coming in, there are a lot of people super hardcore white knighting saying, no, of course netting will be fine. Of course there are ways to easily track beasts. Of course this won't be an issue, blah, 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 blah. So the league then comes out. The league launches, and beast crafting was disabled. We couldn't craft. A lot of the menagerie stuff was bugged. You could capture beasts, but that had its own problems with it. Nets were instantly breaking. Now, I'm not sure exactly what made GGG think this, but I know that I did personally send an email to Beck saying what's stopping people from perma-stunning mobs. Because when you throw a net, it stuns the mob in place for a few seconds. A few people were kind of saying in YouTube, and I know that I personally did say, Bex, hey, what's stopping groups of players just perma-stunning every single beast? So apparently right before the league went live, Chris made a decision that instead of nets stunning the beast and giving you a window to capture them, it will instantly check upon throwing it if you capture it or not. This led to a 0.2 second window of you throw the net, and if the mob is above 10% health, you just couldn't capture it. And it was really frustrating. And that was because they were trying to bypass a last minute exploit. And this kind of just goes to show that this league really did need the extra testing. It needed the extra time. Because, you know, that exploit or bug or feature, whatever you want to call it, was pretty obvious from the get-go, and it's something which should have been addressed from the very beginning. And then that last second change in practice so blatantly just completely ruined the netting mechanic. So that is something that's just the second it was played, someone should have said, hang on, this doesn't make sense. Before it even got played, someone should have said, really? That seems a bit iffy. So that put a lot of people off this league. And this is kind of one of the issues this league has had, just from a purely PR point of view. Because again, I really love this league, and I've really struggled to defend this league, because this league is just a rolling PR ball. One bad thing happens, people start hating on it, and then more bad things happens, and then you just have more reason to hate on it. It's They just keep giving you reasons to hate this league. So, right. They then rework the whole netting thing, and then a bunch of recipes are broken. A lot of the challenges didn't work, some recipes would give you the wrong things, so on and so forth. But general consensus was, you know, crafting the leveling items felt really good, getting the guaranteed adrenaline quicksilvers, that felt nice, that felt rewarding, and leveling, most people agree that, yeah, it feels pretty good while leveling, once they kind of worked on, like, the netting issues. So, once they kind of worked on the netting issues, there still is generally pretty big issues with the recipes in general. So one of the main things you can do from a recipe point of view is you go to your menagerie, and let's say you want to craft a shield, because, you know, SSF, by the way, I want to craft a new shield with life, alright? So you go in here, you type in shield, and you can see these things. Now, when you create a rare strength shield with maximum life, there's no way of guaranteeing what base you get. So you could get a tier 1 base, and there's no way of guaranteeing what kind of roll you get. So this targeted crafting doesn't actually feel that targeted, and this is coming from an SSF point of view. This is like the perfect league for me, but outside of like the unique crafting or the currency crafting or like the prophecy ones, like there are a few very good ones, but the general like specific target crafting of like item bases, it feels really bad because as a SSF, by the way, player, this is the perfect system for me, but whenever I've gone to create a shield, I've just been disappointed because I've gotten a bad roll on a bad base. Now, on armor pieces, you can kind of get away with having bad bases, but if you're trying to craft, like, a sword, for example, you have to get very specific base items, otherwise it feels terrible. If you get a random, you know, level 1 sword with, you know, Tyrannical Fizz mod, who cares, because the base sword is just unplayable. So, that is also something which is fairly obvious that, hang on, this just feels like a very inconsistent essence, almost. And I know Mathel has spoken in great length about that very feature. So that is another case where it's kind of like, you know, this league feels a little bit, you know, whatever. It's, again, really cool idea, really poor execution. So, even in the case of having recipes that you want and the things that you like, there's quite big complaints about the general spawn rate being quite low. Now, I've done a lot of leveling this league, thanks to quite a few bugs and, you know, poor skills. So, from leveling Act 1 to Act 10, I think the Legendary, basically the red beast, it feels quite good. Once you get into mapping, though, and I haven't done that much mapping, mostly just been farming low tiers. The context I've captured is like level 80 and a couple of level 70s. It feels kind of underwhelming. So I definitely think that the spawn rate of beasts could be upped. That being said, I really do love how dangerous and how noticeable the red beasts do kind of feel like. You notice they're there. It reminds you a little bit of like Nemesis or Invasion. I really do like that aspect of it. And generally people do really like these super challenging beasts, or at least just tanky. Like, they're tankier than map bosses in many cases. And it feels far more rewarding to fight something with more health than a map boss when you go, if I capture you, I get to craft a unique. So more beasts feels good. And again, it's not even like it's completely broken, because crafting just a unique item, there are so many things you could hit. It's only, like, very powerful for someone like me, SSF, by the way. For general Trade League players, it's far less noticeable. It's a very nice, like, catch-up mechanism for people who either have limited playtime, but then if you're saying, well, it's good for people with limited playtime, the less time you have to play, the less maps you're clearing. Due to a low spawn rate, you're then less likely to encounter the legendary beasts. The people who have the most legendary beasts, the people who map the most efficiently, don't need budget, random, unique items being thrown at them. So again, there's kind of this weird sort of backwards and forwards where the people who really want access to these specific crafts and to these specific items are the people who encounter the low spawn rates the least. So that again feels kind of awkward. So with this whole netting thing going on, then the big main complaint becomes people are killing beasts they don't want to be killing. And then GGG introduces the idea of the Necromancer nets. And then a poll goes out. Now, personally, I really dislike the idea of a poll, especially a poll so early into a league. So we're not even a full week. I'm recording this like Friday morning. So like we're a few hours away from reaching 1 full week. We had a bunch of recipes disabled. We had Trade Give Beast not even enabled yet. And people are being polled on what they think the long-term core, like, fundamental mechanics of the league should be. That is a big no-no. Not only that, you're polling the entire community. So you're polling some people who haven't even reached maps. You're polling people who've been farming Elder. You're polling people who are playing Standard, haven't even played the league. It's just like mass polling so early into a league is very scary. Also, the people who just play the game aren't going to be aware of it. The people who are going to be most aware of it are the people on Reddit and the people who can't play that much. So it's just the idea of even polling in the community in the first place is something I'm very much against when it comes to big, like, mechanical changes like that. And then also to do it so early in the league when people are still trying to work out if they like it or not is also kind of iffy. Another big reason why I was against, and I actually voted no for Necronets, if anyone asks, was Necronets felt like a very lazy fix. So I voted no to Necronets, not because I didn't want to be able to capture dead beasts, but because I didn't want the laziest fix to go through. And again, because it was just a select one of 3 options, which was no, we don't want Necronets, or yes, we want Necronets but rare, yes, we want them but common, and no further up like questions or anything, there's absolutely no context in there. So you have like a bad poll with like unreliable results with no real proper feedback, and the results were incredibly close. It was like 48% said no, then like 25% said this, and like 25% said this. So they decided to introduce the Necronets, and the Necronets are put into the game. Now, even when the Necronets get put in, they get put in with issues because, you know, this league is just the issue league. So they get put in, and you can't revive monsters that have been shattered, exploded, or otherwise had their corpse removed. So for builds which shatter or corpse explode or whatever, it's just like you're boned. Which is just like, Generally, you weren't accidentally killing the rare legendary beasts. You were accidentally killing the random rares you're encountering. And those you can shatter. If you're playing like a summoner, you're regularly just throwing flesh offering into packs. If you're, you know, playing a Detonate Dead or a Volatile Dead build, etc. Most builds shatter in some way, like the vast majority of builds. So a net goes in that like 50% of the community is against, it goes in, and for the vast majority of builds, it's unworkable. Also, there was a bug apparently that when nets were first put in, you couldn't even use the Necronets unless you had a corpse skill on your bar, so you could actually target the corpses. So again, it's kind of like, where was the testing on this? This just kind of needed testing. So, from that, we then had some recipes enabled, which were previously disabled, because they required beasts that you couldn't get, and so on and so forth. So, once these get enabled, there were then roughly about 12 hours of unintended duplicating of Elder and Shaper bases and lab enchants. Now, the duping of 6-links, that was intended. The whole point was you were able to dupe 6-links. And duping 6-links isn't actually that big of a deal, because it's just like 6-links are cheap. The reason when duping items becomes a big deal is it's when you are copying like eye level 80 Elder and Shaper bases. That is very big deal. When you can copy Helm enchants, that's a big deal. The core, like, oh, there's lots of accessibility to 6-links, who cares? Because most people use unique chests, you couldn't copy unique chests, so it's like having access to easy, like, astral plates really isn't that big of a deal. The main issue was mostly just that the recipe was too cheap in that case, which it definitely was too cheap, and then the much bigger part of the Elder and Shaper, and then the lab enchants that people who farm lab. So this goes on for roughly about, 10-12 hours. Reddit starts freaking out, streamers start freaking out. You then have this awkward thing where I was watching Rise at the time, and you end up in this awkward situation where, you then have streamers who say, wait, really? You can do this? They do it, and then they're in this case of, shit, am I going to get banned? Is this an exploit? And then you have this weird panic of, hang on, am I going to get banned for doing something which was intended? And that's just a fail. Like, you don't want people playing your game to do something which you've enabled them to do, to then be going, hang on, is this a bannable offense? What am I going to be doing? You don't want people talking about rolling back servers 12 hours. Like, it's not good for anyone, right? Now, from this, we got a post from Chris, and I just want to say, we got a post from Chris at 5 in the morning. He posted at 4 p.m. my time, which is 5 a.m. New Zealand time. So for context, like, the GGG team was asleep, and someone woke up Chris, and then he had to prepare a response at 5 in the morning. And the basic TLDR was, I'm very sorry about this. It's clear the recipe didn't receive sufficient testing, and that's on us. And we are less than a week in. Now, in the big scheme of things, does any of this really matter? No. For the people saying, I'm done with this league, screw this, blah, 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 it doesn't matter. You're not affected. Most people aren't really affected by this. The main issue from my mind is just a continued series of rushed leagues which feel underdeveloped, and then because Chris and the team are so dedicated to just pumping out content, I think the next major league we're coming is with another expansion. We had 2 expansions back to back. A lot of it is just like, this cycle doesn't seem to be sustainable, and some serious thought needs to be put into it. That being said, I want them to keep having cool ideas. Just, you really, really, really need to test your ideas. Stop what you're doing. Hire like 1 million more testers. And if there is some way that, you know, we could better send feedback, because I'm speaking as someone who streams and organizes a podcast, people are more than happy to give very detailed feedback. I think that one thing which would be good is if there was a proper way of giving set feedback and a proper system for it, rather than let's all just circle jerk each other on Reddit for long enough that a stupid poll gets made, and then from a poll where 50% of the community is disappointed, something else gets made. Having a much more targeted, much more intelligent way of giving clear feedback on mechanics, hopefully before they come out, so they can come out in a more polished state, is the ideal. That all being said, though, I still think that Bestiary as a core idea is good, and I also think that with work, this is a very good long-term thing for the game, and I want this to go into the core game. I feel like this is a much cooler idea than Prophecy. I think this is genuinely a much cooler system than Masters. I think this has so much potential, and I really, really, really like this league. Everyone I've spoken to from an SSF point of view loves this league. We all acknowledge this league has major flaws, but this league has serious, serious potential. So for the people freaking out and they're like burning their computers and tearing up their, you know, supporter t-shirts and, you know, selling their accounts on eBay and blaspheming, you know, I shall never play this game, I'm Paragon 20,000 in D3. It's really not that bad. Sextants were a much bigger issue for a long time, if you ask me. But yeah, this is my opinion. Feel free to disagree. And we'll be going in a lot more depth in Bayclast on Saturday. I'll leave a timer down below. And I'm very curious to see what other fresh memes spring up once beast trading becomes enabled. And yeah, hopefully we have no more major missteps. I'm Tarke. Have a good day. Bye-bye.